The metal was still warm against my palm when Colonel Hayes ruined my life. New Chicago's skyline burned gold in the late afternoon sun, banners snapping between towers, cameras hovering like metal insects to capture the hero of Titan Station. That's what they call me now. Hero. Not the last man standing in a corridor that smelled like burning insulation and blood. Gunnery Sergeant Carter, Hayes said quietly, pulling me away from the applause. You're being reassigned. Effective immediately. I almost laughed. Sir, I was promised 2 weeks leave. The Elyndari delegation arrived early. That shut me up. Everyone knew the Elyndari. Ancient, advanced, untouchable. Their ships looked like living glass drifting through vacuum. Their technology was the only reason the Virex Dominion hadn't steamrolled half the spiral arm already. Their princess requested a decorated human soldier as her personal guard. Hayes continued. You fit the profile. Profile, I muttered. You mean expendable? His jaw tightened. You mean experienced? 20 minutes later, I was stripped of ceremony and standing in the diplomatic wing of Pacifica Complex, dress uniform stiff on my shoulders like it didn't belong to me anymore. The door slid open before I could knock. Princess Alara Vane stood in the threshold. She wasn't towering like the Elyndari in the intel briefings. Slighter, pale silver skin with a faint violet sheen under the lights. Eyes like fractured starlight. She studied me with unsettling focus. Gunnery Sergeant Ryan Carter, she said. Not a question. I came to attention. Your Highness. Behind her calm expression, something moved. Calculation, maybe. What Command hadn't told me was that she'd already offered Earth the Elyndari Planetary Shield Network in secret. A gift her High Council had explicitly forbidden. I thought I was being assigned to guard royalty. I didn't realize I'd just been assigned to guard a rebellion. The first thing I learned about Princess Alara Vane was that she didn't waste time pretending. The second thing I learned was that I had no idea what I'd just stepped into. It was 0200 when she found me on the balcony outside her diplomatic quarters. Pacifica Complex overlooked the Western Ocean, black water stretching into darkness, city lights trembling in the distance. I hadn't slept. I rarely did anymore. You do not rest, she said behind me. I didn't turn. Occupational hazard. The glass door whispered shut as she stepped beside me. Up close, the faint luminescence beneath her skin was more noticeable, like starlight trapped beneath crystal. Elyndari physiology files had described them as bioprismatic. It hadn't mentioned how human her expression could look when she was tired. We Elyndari require only 4 of your hours of sleep, she said. You require more, yet you deny yourself. I manage. That is not what I observed in your medical file. That got my attention. I glanced sideways. My medical file isn't public record. She met my eyes evenly. I have access to more than public records. Of course she did. The ocean wind moved her hair, pale silver with faint streaks of lavender that caught the moonlight. For a moment, she looked less like a diplomatic figure and more like someone my age standing on a balcony at the end of a long day. I did not request you because of your decorations, she said. That's not what I was told. You were told what was convenient. That tracked. Silence stretched between us, broken only by distant traffic and the low hum of security drones circling the perimeter. Finally, she said, if I return to Elyndra Prime, I will be executed. I turned fully toward her. The words were calm, precise, as if she were stating a weather report. Executed, I repeated. For treason. I searched her face for signs of exaggeration. There weren't any. You're here to negotiate an alliance, I said slowly. I am here to ensure its survival, she corrected, even if it costs me my own. The diplomatic briefings hadn't mentioned that part. My High Council forbade sharing our planetary shield technology with humanity, she continued. They believe it will weaken our strategic advantage. They are not entirely wrong. But you offered it anyway. Yes. Why? Her gaze shifted back toward the ocean. Because the Virex Dominion does not respect strategic advantage. They consume civilizations, system by system. Your world is not ready to withstand them. And yours is? A faint shadow crossed her expression. Not alone. The weight of that settled heavily. 3 incidents occurred during my transit to Earth, she said. Officially classified as mechanical malfunctions. I waited. They were assassination attempts. The word hung in the air between us. Authorized, she added quietly, by members of my own government. I felt something cold slide down my spine. You're telling me your High Council tried to kill you before you even arrived? Yes. And you still came. I had to. I studied her more carefully now. Not as a diplomatic assignment. Not as an alien royal. As a target. Why request a human soldier? I asked. She looked at me again, really looked at me. Because an Elyndari guard may be loyal to the throne before they are loyal to me. And a human? A human guard cannot be pressured by Elyndari politics. Cannot be bribed by Elyndari factions. And, she paused slightly, cannot be ordered by my High Council. So I'm political insulation. You are independence. I exhaled slowly. Your file indicates you held a corridor on Titan Station for 9 hours, she continued. Alone, while civilian transports evacuated. That corridor flashed in my mind whether I wanted it to or not. Smoke. Failing lights. The constant scream of proximity alarms. The smell of burning composite plating. You lost 32 personnel under your command during that engagement, she said softly. You survived. The word felt heavier than it should have. You think that makes me qualified to protect you? No, she said. I frowned. I think it makes you someone who understands the cost of failure. The ocean wind picked up slightly. Somewhere below, a patrol drone changed course. If I return home, she said, voice lower now, my death will be framed as honorable. Necessary. A sacrifice to preserve Elyndari supremacy. And you don't want to be a martyr. I do not want my death to be convenient. That line landed harder than the execution confession. I am not merely negotiating a treaty, Sergeant Carter, she continued. I am defying centuries of isolationist doctrine. If this alliance succeeds, it will reshape both our civilizations. And if it fails? She didn't hesitate. Then Earth burns, and my people will follow shortly after. The bluntness of it was almost refreshing. You're asking me to protect you from your own species, I said. Yes. And possibly from mine. Yes. I let out a quiet breath. You realize this is above my pay grade. She tilted her head slightly. You are no longer paid for combat. You are paid for protection. That's not what I meant. I know. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I said, if what you're telling me is true, then this isn't just a diplomatic detail. No, it's a battlefield. Her eyes held mine. Yes. I studied her carefully again. No tremor in her voice. No hesitation. Just resolve. You could have told command, I said. I do not trust your command entirely. I barked a quiet, humorless laugh. Smart. She almost smiled. Gunnery Sergeant Carter, she said, and this time there was something different in her tone. Not formality. Something closer to honesty. I chose you because you survived being broken. That caught me off guard. You read too much into files. I read what your superiors attempted to redact. Of course she did. You carry guilt, she said gently. But you still stand. I didn't respond. I require someone who understands that survival is not weakness, she continued. Someone who knows that sometimes defying orders is the only way to preserve what truly matters. You're assuming I defy orders for you. She held my gaze without blinking. I am. The ocean roared softly below us. I looked back out at the water. You realize, I said slowly, if your High Council wants you dead, they won't stop at 3 attempts. I am aware. And if Earth's Defense Council finds out you're offering tech without authorization, they'll panic. Yes. And you're standing here telling me all this like it's just another night briefing. She was silent for a moment. I have been alone in this decision for months, she said quietly. It is relieving to speak it aloud. There it was. Not fear. Loneliness. I finally turned fully toward her. Princess, I said carefully, if you're right about the Virex, then this alliance is the only thing standing between humanity and extinction. Yes. And your own people are willing to kill you to stop it. Yes. And you still came. Yes. I studied her for a long moment. You're either the bravest person I've ever met, I said, or the most reckless. Her eyes softened slightly. Those qualities are not mutually exclusive. A faint smirk tugged at my mouth despite myself. She had a point. The city lights flickered as a cargo transport passed overhead, casting shifting shadows across the balcony. Why tell me this now? I asked. Because if another attempt occurs, she said, I need you to understand that it may not come from where you expect. And you don't want me hesitating. Yes. I nodded slowly. All right, I said. Then here's my response. She waited. If someone comes for you, I said evenly. I stopped them. I don't care what planet they're from. Something shifted in her expression then. Not relief exactly. Recognition. Thank you, she said softly. I looked back out at the ocean again. You should know something too, I added. Yes. If this goes bad, if your council decides you're more dangerous alive than dead, they won't be the only ones. She didn't look surprised. I assumed as much. Good. We stood there in silence for a while longer. The medal ceremony felt like it had happened years ago instead of hours. I had thought I was reassigned to protect royalty. Instead, I'd been handed a princess marked for death by her own government, one who had secretly gambled her life on an alliance that could save two civilizations. And for the first time since Titan Station, I felt something unfamiliar pressing against the walls I'd built inside myself. Not dread, not adrenaline. Purpose. I had sworn to protect her. I just didn't realize yet how much she was already protecting something in me. If you've watched this far, then this story is really interesting to you. Please confirm it by clicking like under this video. It doesn't cost you anything, but it will help me understand what story to publish for you next. Write in the comments who the alien woman in this story looks like, and who you would like to see in the next one. Let's move on. I thought I understood why Princess Elyndari Vane had requested me. I was wrong. The next morning, I reported to her quarters at 0600 sharp, expecting a formal security briefing, updated threat matrices, maybe an awkward discussion about perimeter protocols. Instead, I found her seated at a narrow table overlooking the ocean, a holographic display hovering between us. Lines of text scrolled in multiple languages: English, Elyndari glyph script, and something else I didn't recognize. She didn't look up when I entered. Your resting heart rate averages 92 beats per minute, she said calmly. I stopped mid-step. That's classified medical data. Yes. You keep saying that like it's normal. It is not, she replied mildly. But it is necessary. I folded my arms. Necessary for what? For understanding you. I stared at her. I did not choose you at random, Gunnery Sergeant Carter, she continued. I studied your service record, your psychological evaluations, the redacted after-action reports from Titan Station. My jaw tightened. That corridor was sealed after evacuation, she said softly. You were ordered to withdraw. That's enough. You stayed. I took a step closer to the table. Princess, you stayed because you believed if you left, the Virex would breach civilian transport lanes. I didn't answer. You disobeyed orders. The word hung in the air. Yes, I said finally. And you survived. 32 others didn't. Her gaze didn't waver. You carry their names. That one hit like a body blow. I exhaled slowly through my nose. If this is some kind of alien therapy session. It is not, she said quietly. It is strategy. I frowned. My High Council assumes that humans are emotionally volatile, she continued. That your species reacts impulsively under pressure. Sometimes we do. Yes, but you did not. I lost control of that corridor more times than I can count. You maintained it. I looked away. You survived your breaking point, she said. I let out a short, humorless laugh. You make it sound poetic. I do not intend poetry. She finally stood, the holographic display dimming. You assume you were assigned because you are competent. I am competent. Yes, she agreed. But that is not why I chose you. The words settled heavily between us. Then why? I asked. She stepped closer, stopping just short of violating formal distance. Because you understand the weight of sacrifice, she said. But you no longer glorify it. My brow furrowed. Your early career reports indicate higher aggression markers, she continued. After Titan Station, those markers decrease. Not because you became weaker, because you became cautious. That's called trauma. It is called learning. She held my gaze steadily. My High Council believes sacrifice is strength, she said. They believe my death would inspire unity. And you disagree. I believe survival is strength. The ocean light reflected faintly in her eyes, fractured and bright. I do not want to be remembered as a martyr, she said quietly. I want to live long enough to see this alliance work. I studied her carefully. You're telling me you chose me because I disobeyed orders and lived with it. Yes. That's not exactly a flattering endorsement. It is honest. Silence stretched between us. You think I need protection too? I said slowly. She didn't hesitate. Yes. I let out a breath. The human soldier swore to protect the alien princess, she said, her voice softer now. But he needed protection himself. The words weren't mocking. They were observational. I don't need protection, I muttered automatically. You do, she said. Just not from weapons. That annoyed me more than I expected. I don't need you analyzing me, I snapped. And I do not need you pretending you are not fractured, she replied calmly. We stood there, tension tightening the space between us. Finally, she broke eye contact first. You have not slept more than 3 consecutive hours in 8 months, she said quietly. You avoid enclosed spaces when not on duty. You position yourself near exits. You eat only when prompted. That's called situational awareness. It is called hypervigilance. I clenched my jaw. You asked why I chose you, she continued. I chose you because you are not blind to fear. You function despite it. Fear keeps you alive. Yes, she agreed. But it can also keep you from living. That one landed deeper than I wanted. She stepped back slightly, creating space again. My people believe you are broken, she said. Your own command likely does as well. They assigned you to ceremonial duties before this reassignment. That's speculation. It is data. She wasn't wrong. The medal ceremony had felt like a polite retirement party disguised as celebration. You are not broken, she said quietly. You are unfinished. I stared at her. That's a new one. She almost smiled. I do not require a flawless guardian, she continued. I require one who understands what it costs to make impossible choices. You're planning to make one. Yes. The air shifted slightly, heavy with implications neither of us voiced. You think your council will escalate, I said. Yes. And you think Earth's Defense Council might hesitate when they realize what you've done. Yes. So you picked the soldier most likely to ignore orders if necessary. Her expression remained composed. Yes. I let out a slow breath. You're gambling a lot on me. I am. Why? She held my gaze for a long moment. Because you survived Titan Station, she said. And you did not become cruel. That caught me off guard. What? Your disciplinary records show no retaliatory brutality, no excessive force citations, no civilian infractions. I followed the rules. You followed your conscience. The difference hung between us. My people respect strength, she said softly. But we have forgotten restraint. I crossed my arms again, thinking. You think I can teach you something? I said. Yes. And what exactly is that? How to survive without becoming what hunts us. I didn't have a ready response to that. For the first time since being reassigned, I realized this wasn't just about protecting her from assassins. She wasn't just looking for a bodyguard. She was looking for someone who wouldn't let her become a symbol of noble suicide. You're asking a lot, I said quietly. I am. And what do I get out of this? She tilted her head slightly. What do you want? The question hit harder than it should have. I hadn't asked myself that in years. I started, then stopped. I didn't know. Purpose, maybe. Silence. Something that wasn't a corridor full of smoke and screaming. She seemed to read the hesitation. You want the weight to mean something, she said softly. I didn't answer. You want the dead to have purchased something greater than survival. My throat tightened unexpectedly. She stepped back, giving me distance again. I cannot promise you peace, she said. But I can promise you that this alliance matters. The sunlight brightened as the morning advanced, casting pale gold across the ocean. You were assigned to protect me, she said. Yeah, but I chose you because I believed you might also allow yourself to be saved. That unsettled me more than any assassination warning. I don't need saving, I repeated quietly. She didn't argue this time. Instead, she simply said, we will see. A notification chimed from the hallway outside, summit schedules updating, delegates arriving. She turned toward the interior of the room. Pacifica Dome in 2 hours, she said. Closed-door negotiations with the Defense Council. Threat level. Elevated. When is it not? A faint glimmer of amusement crossed her face. You see, she said softly. You are not broken. You are observant. I shook my head slightly. As she moved toward the doorway, she paused. Gunnery Sergeant Carter, she said. Yes, Your Highness? If the moment comes when I attempt to sacrifice myself for expedience. Don't. I expect you to stop me. That wasn't in the job description. But I nodded anyway. Yes, ma'am. She held my gaze for 1 second longer than protocol required. Then she walked out toward the day that would test both of us. I had sworn to protect the alien princess. I just didn't realize yet that she'd already begun dismantling the walls I'd built to survive my own war. And I wasn't sure if that made her more dangerous or more necessary. Pacifica Dome was built to impress. A cathedral of reinforced glass and adaptive alloy, rising above the ocean like something grown rather than constructed. Sunlight refracted through its layered panels, scattering soft prisms across the polished floor. It was beautiful in the way powerful institutions like to present themselves: transparent, elegant, untouchable. I hated it instantly. Too many sightlines. Too many elevated positions. Too many reflective surfaces for someone to hide behind. Princess Elyndari walked beside me, posture composed, movements precise. Elyndari diplomats trailed behind her, tall, silver-skinned, eyes cold and assessing. They did not acknowledge me beyond the briefest flickers of disapproval. I noticed. Elyndari noticed that I noticed. "You are scanning exit vectors," she said quietly without turning her head. "Always. There are 6 primary exits and 3 concealed emergency corridors." I counted 8. 1 was decommissioned. Not according to the ventilation heat signatures. A pause. "You are correct," she said softly. We entered the closed-door chamber at the heart of the dome. Circular, layered seating, Earth's Defense Council arranged in a crescent across from the Elyndari delegation. Overhead, hollow projectors shimmered with rotating system maps. I took my position slightly behind and to Elyndari's right, where I could see everyone, where everyone could see me. Negotiations began smoothly. Too smoothly. Trade concessions, shared research protocols, limited military transparency clauses, words layered over deeper currents. Elyndari's voice remained calm, measured, unyielding. She spoke of survival not as leverage, but as inevitability. I watched hands, eyes, micro-expressions. 2 council members were uneasy, not hostile, but calculating. One of them kept glancing toward the lighting rig overhead. I logged it mentally. 47 minutes in, as the discussion turned to phased deployment of the planetary shield network, the lights went out. Not dimmed, not flickered, gone. Total blackout. In that fraction of a second before the emergency systems engaged, I moved. My hand closed around Elyndari's forearm and pulled her down behind the curved table as I drew my sidearm. 3 suppressed shots cracked through the darkness. Not plasma, ballistic, human. Emergency red lights flared to life, bathing the chamber in blood-colored glow. 2 contacts, west corridor. I barked, already moving. Security personnel scrambled, confused. I wasn't. The first attacker rounded the far column, tactical mask, civilian-grade armor. Not professional military. I fired once. Center mass. He dropped. The second came from the opposite angle, smarter, using the chaos. I pivoted, closing distance instead of firing. If they'd chosen ballistic weapons inside a diplomatic dome, they wanted deniability. I slammed him into the wall hard enough to crack composite. Disarmed. Chokehold. He fought like a trained extremist, not a soldier. He went limp in 8 seconds. I scanned. That's when I realized something was wrong. "Third contact," someone shouted. But I didn't see him. Until I saw Elyndari. She was standing. Not behind me. Not shielded. Standing 10 feet away, facing a man I hadn't detected. He had a blade at her throat. My heart slammed against my ribs. I stepped forward. "Don't," she said calmly. The attacker's voice shook. "This alliance dies today." Human accent. Domestic radical. He pressed the blade closer. I adjusted my angle, calculating trajectory. Too risky. Then I saw it. Elyndari's hand, resting lightly against the attacker's wrist. Her skin began to glow. Not bright. Subtle. Like bioluminescence under pressure. The man stiffened. His muscles locked. The blade clattered to the floor. He collapsed without a sound. Silence flooded the chamber. Every eye turned toward her, including mine. She lowered her hand slowly. "Non-lethal neural disruption," she said evenly. "Temporary." I stared at her. "You didn't mention you could do that. You did not ask." Security forces rushed in, weapons drawn too late to matter. Within minutes, the attackers were restrained. Human extremists. Affiliation tags linked to an anti-alliance faction that had been growing louder over the past months. The irony tasted bitter. The first blood spilled in defense of an interstellar alliance had come from humanity itself. Elyndari turned to me as the chamber stabilized. "You were correct," she said quietly. "About what?" "That danger would not come solely from my people." I holstered my weapon slowly, adrenaline still spiking. "You were going to let him hold that blade to your throat." "No." "You didn't look particularly concerned." I calculated the timing. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. That's not how this works. How does it work? She asked. I step in front. You stay behind. She held my gaze. I did not request someone to stand in front of me, she said softly. I requested someone to stand beside me. The words unsettled me more than the attack had. You could have been killed. So could you. That's my job, and I am not helpless. I looked at the unconscious attacker at her feet. No, I admitted. You're not. Emergency lights brightened as power restored fully. Media blackout protocols were already engaged. Official statements would frame this as a contained security breach. But the damage was done. Trust had cracked. And worse, the attack had been coordinated. Too coordinated. Later, in a secured debriefing chamber, I studied the captured assailants. Funding trails are muddy, an intelligence officer muttered. But there's external influence here. Define external, I said. He hesitated. Off-world. Elyndari met my eyes across the room. Not random extremists. Not coincidence. Someone wanted the alliance destabilized from both sides. When the debrief ended, I found her alone in a quiet observation corridor overlooking the ocean. You're stronger than you let on, I said. She didn't turn. My people train for more than ceremony. Why hide it? Because if I appear too capable, my High Council's narrative shifts. To what? That I am a threat. I leaned against the wall beside her. You are a threat. To whom? To anyone who benefits from isolation. She looked at me then. You disapproved, she said. Of what? Of me standing in danger. I did. Why? Because I had watched too many people die while I survived. Because I couldn't add her face to that list. Because something about her refusing to play the martyr twisted something inside me. I'm your shield, I said instead. She studied me quietly. And you believe shields must always stand in front. That's how shields work. In my culture, she said softly, shields interlock. I didn't have a comeback for that. Silence settled between us, heavy but not hostile. The human soldier swore to protect the alien princess, she said quietly. I exhaled. But he needed protection himself, she finished. I didn't answer. The attack had proven one thing clearly. She was never helpless. She just needed someone willing to fight at her side. And for the first time since Titan Station, I realized something dangerous. I didn't just feel responsible for her survival. I wanted her to live. Not as a symbol, not as leverage, as Elyndari. That made everything more complicated. Because standing beside someone is far harder than standing in front of them. And the war hadn't even started yet. The attack at Pacifica Dome should have unified everyone. Instead, it fractured the room in ways that weren't visible on the surface. Publicly, Earth's Defense Council condemned the extremists. Elyndari delegates issued statements of composure and continued cooperation. Media channels ran carefully edited footage of security forces restoring order. But behind sealed doors, something colder was moving. I felt it before I saw proof. 2 days after the attack, I was summoned to a restricted tactical briefing inside the Defense Council's subterranean war chamber. Elyndari wasn't invited. That alone told me enough. The chamber was dim, lit primarily by a rotating holographic projection of the solar system. Earth pulsed at the center in calm blue. Lunar installations glowed in white. Defensive arrays shimmered in green. Then the projection shifted. Red signatures bloomed at the edge of the system. 47 vessels. Angular silhouettes. Dense energy cores. Formation discipline. Virex Dominion. They weren't scheduled to enter our detection perimeter for another 72 hours, Admiral Kessler said grimly. They accelerated. How? I asked. No visible drive flare. No jump distortion signature we could isolate. Meaning one thing. They had precise coordinates. They're heading directly toward Earth, Kessler continued. Not a sweep. Not reconnaissance. A strike vector. My pulse slowed instead of quickened. Combat reflex. How did they know the Alliance summit timeline? I asked quietly. No one answered. Because everyone in the room was thinking the same thing. Leak. Signal intercepts suggest they're targeting high-density population centers, a systems analyst added. They expect planetary defense to be incomplete. Because it is, I said. The planetary shield network Elyndari had offered required phased integration. Biometric activation keys. Alignment with Earth's orbital lattice. 72 hours minimum. They'll arrive in 36, Kessler said flatly. The math didn't work. Unless someone had told them exactly when to move. I left the chamber with a sick weight in my gut. If the Virex were moving with that precision, then someone inside Earth's Defense Council, or within the Elyndari delegation, had handed them a roadmap. When I returned to Alara's quarters, she was already waiting. "You were briefed," she said quietly. "Yes." "They are coming." "Yes." She turned toward the ocean, hands clasped behind her back. "They moved too early," she murmured. "They moved exactly when they were supposed to," I replied. She glanced at me. "There is a leak," I said. Her jaw tightened slightly, the first visible crack in her composure since I'd met her. "I suspected as much." "From your side?" "Possibly." "From ours?" "Also possible." That was the part that scared me more. Earth wasn't united in this alliance. Some factions feared Elyndari dominance. Others resented alien interference. A few believed humanity should face extinction on its own terms rather than accept external aid. Ideology killed just as efficiently as plasma. "The SHIELD network," I said. "Can it stop a fleet that size?" "If fully deployed, yes," she answered. "The Virex rely on overwhelming kinetic bombardment and atmospheric destabilization. The Elyndari lattice disrupts both. But it requires primary biometric authorization aboard our flagship." I already knew what that meant. "Yes. And the flagship is under control of the same High Council that authorized your execution." "Yes." I ran a hand over my face. "That's convenient." "It is efficient," she corrected quietly. I stepped closer. "If you board that ship, they can detain you. Or kill you." "Yes. And without you, the shield doesn't activate." "Correct." The room felt smaller suddenly. "Then we find another way," I said. "There is no other way," she replied. The certainty in her voice wasn't arrogance. It was data. "Your High Council would rather see Earth burn than share tech?" I asked. "They believe long-term Elyndari dominance is preferable to short-term vulnerability." "That's insane." "It is logical," she said softly. "If one prioritizes survival of one's own species above all else. And you don't." She met my eyes. "I prioritize survival of civilization." There it was again. Not martyrdom. Not heroism. Choice. A notification chimed from her console. Incoming transmission. Encrypted Elyndari channel. She hesitated before accepting. The holographic figure that appeared was tall, radiant azure. Older, sharper features than Alara's softer silver hue. Authority radiated off him like static. "Princess Vane," the figure said coldly. "You have exceeded your mandate." "Admiral Velerin," she replied evenly. "You will return to the flagship immediately." "For what purpose?" "For reassignment." A lie wrapped in formality. "I am engaged in negotiations," she said calmly. "Negotiations are irrelevant," Velerin snapped. "The Virex fleet approaches. Your presence is required for emergency protocol activation." I stepped closer, staying just outside the hologram's visual range. "You intend to confine her," I said loudly enough to be heard. The Admiral's eyes shifted slightly. "A human," he said with thinly veiled contempt. "Gunnery Sergeant Ryan Carter," I replied evenly. "You are not authorized to speak." "I'm authorized to keep her alive." Velerin's gaze hardened. "The princess will return to the flagship within 6 hours," he said. "Failure to comply will result in formal charges." The transmission cut. Silence filled the room. "They're forcing your hand," I said. "Yes." "And you're considering going?" She didn't answer immediately. "If I do not," she said softly, "the shield will not activate in time. And if you do, I will likely be detained, possibly executed." I stepped in front of her before I realized I was doing it. "No." Her eyes flickered briefly in surprise. "You said you'd stop me," she reminded gently. "I meant stop you from sacrificing yourself blindly." "This is not blind. This is exactly what your council wants." "Earth will be destroyed in 36 hours, she said quietly. "Billions of lives." The weight of that pressed into my chest. "You think I don't understand that?" I said. "I know you do." Her voice softened. "Ryan," she said. "First name. Not title. Not rank. Just me. If my death ensures activation." "It doesn't," I cut in sharply. She paused. "I intercepted interrogation logs from the extremists we captured," I said. "They were in contact with off-world operatives." Her eyes narrowed. Meaning the leak isn't just yours." Understanding dawned slowly across her face. "The Virex Dominion knew the exact summit timeline," I continued. "They accelerated accordingly. That suggests internal access on both sides." Her posture shifted subtly. They intend to destabilize us simultaneously, she murmured. Yes. And if I board the flagship under High Council authority, you walk straight into a trap that benefits them. Silence. Then realization. If they execute me, she said slowly, it fractures Earth's trust. And if Earth refuses the shield tech after that, the Virex strike unopposed. She exhaled slowly. They are manipulating both governments. Exactly. The strategic board expanded in my mind like a combat map. You don't surrender, I said firmly. You activate the shield, but not on their terms. There is no alternative access point, she replied. I hesitated. Then I remembered something. The extremists. The captured ones. They had encrypted comm devices, I said. Access to relay frequencies beyond civilian spectrum. She looked at me sharply. You believe they had override codes. Or fragments. And you believe you can reconstruct them. I've done worse with less. The plan began forming between us without being spoken. Her eyes searched mine. You would be committing treason, she said quietly. Probably. You would lose your rank. Your career. Maybe. And possibly your life. I met her gaze steadily. That's the job. No, she said softly. That is sacrifice. I shook my head. That's choice. Silence again. Heavy. Charged. Finally she asked, why? Because I was tired of watching people die for causes that didn't deserve them. Because she refused to let herself become convenient. Because the human soldier swore to protect the alien princess. But he needed protection himself. And somewhere between Titan Station and that balcony overlooking the ocean, she'd reminded me I was still human. I'm not letting you walk into their execution chamber, I said simply. Her eyes shimmered faintly, the Elyndari equivalent of emotion surfacing. The shield must activate, she whispered. It will. And if we fail, then we fail together. That changed something in the air between us. She stepped closer. We would have perhaps 30 minutes aboard the flagship before security isolates us. Then we make those 30 minutes count. You are reckless. I prefer decisive. A faint, almost reluctant smile touched her lips. Very well, she said. Outside the window, Earth's atmosphere shimmered faintly in orbital light. Far beyond it, Red Fleet signatures moved closer. Time was collapsing. Governments were fracturing. And the only way to save the planet was to break every rule written to protect it. I had been assigned to guard a princess. Instead, I was about to commit interstellar treason to keep her alive. And for the first time since Titan Station, I wasn't afraid. We had less than 12 hours before the Virex fleet entered optimal strike range. 8 before panic would start spreading through civilian channels. For before orbital defense platforms would begin powering up in ways that would tip our hand. Time wasn't just short. It was collapsing. The plan was simple in theory and catastrophic in execution. We would use fragments of encryption recovered from the captured extremists to reconstruct a temporary command authentication pathway into the Elyndari flagship's secondary systems. Not the main command grid, too fortified, but emergency protocol subsystems, the kind designed to bypass bureaucracy during extinction-level threats. Alera's biometrics were still required. Her physical presence was still required. But we wouldn't arrive as surrendering detainees. We would arrive as an anomaly. And anomalies by time. I spent 6 straight hours in a secured cyber-ops chamber with 2 intelligence analysts who were too smart to ask questions and too loyal to the council to officially approve what we were doing. You understand this is illegal, one of them muttered. Extinction is also illegal, I replied without looking up. We cracked enough of the extremist relay architecture to identify a handshake pattern, a partial override token likely provided by off-world collaborators. That confirmed it. The leak wasn't random. The Virex Dominion had allies inside both governments, or at least opportunists willing to destabilize the alliance. When I returned to Alera's quarters, she was already suited for atmospheric transition. Elyndari environmental armor looked like living crystal, flexible, iridescent, adapting to pressure variance. It traced her form in subtle lines of light, luminous veins running along her arms. You are prepared, she said quietly. So are you. She studied me carefully. You do not appear afraid. I am, I admitted. I just don't let it drive. She nodded once. A shuttle awaited us in a concealed Pacifica hangar. Officially, it was transporting diplomatic liaisons to orbital coordination platforms. Unofficially, It was about to commit the kind of operation that would end careers or start wars. As the shuttle ascended through Earth's upper atmosphere, the planet curved beneath us, blue, fragile, impossibly alive. I caught her looking at it. "If this fails," she said softly, "they will blame you. Probably. You will be dishonorably discharged. Probably. You will lose everything you built." I looked at her. Not everything. Her eyes held mine for a second longer than necessary. Then she turned back toward the viewport. The Elyndari flagship appeared like a shard of frozen lightning suspended in orbit, vast, angular, refracting sunlight into spectral flares. Beautiful, deadly, and full of people who wanted her silenced. Docking clearance pinged us. Unexpected. That meant one of two things. Either the override fragments were working, or they were waiting. We boarded through a secondary access port, not ceremonial. Industrial. Cold. The atmosphere inside shifted immediately, denser, tinged with metallic ozone. My suit compensated automatically, but warning indicators glowed faintly. We moved quickly through crystalline corridors that hummed with energy. Security patrols were present, but sparse. Too sparse. "They are drawing us inward," I muttered. "Yes," she agreed calmly. A central systems conduit opened before us. Access to emergency deployment controls. A holographic interface bloomed to life as Elyndari stepped forward. Biometric confirmation required, the ship's AI intoned. She placed her palm against the luminous panel. Light surged upward along her arm. "Princess Elyndari Vane recognized." "Good. So far." "Emergency shield lattice authorization?" She hesitated only half a second. "Confirmed." The ship pulsed faintly. Far below us, Earth's orbital lattice began receiving initialization signals. 3 minutes to deployment. That's when the corridor lights shifted from white to deep blue. Containment mode. Figures emerged from the far end of the passage. Admiral Velarin at the center. 6 armed Elyndari guards behind him. Their armor shimmered with active energy fields. "You disappoint me, Princess," Velarin said coldly. "I expected that," she replied evenly. "You bring a human into our warship during a state of emergency. I bring an ally. You bring contamination." I stepped slightly to her side, adjusting my stance. "You can argue politics later," I said. "Right now your planet's about to get hit too." Velarin's gaze shifted to me like I was an insect. "The Virex do not threaten Elyndra Prime at this moment." "They will," Elyndari said sharply. "You know they will. They will not if we remain sovereign. They will consume you after they consume us," she shot back. The Admiral's expression hardened. "You have overstepped." "No," she said quietly. "I have acted." Behind her, the interface pulsed brighter. 2 minutes. Velarin raised a hand. Guards advanced. I moved instinctively in front of her. She grabbed my wrist. "No," she said softly. Then she stepped beside me instead. Her arm began to glow again, brighter this time. Not subtle neural disruption. Something deeper. Energy crackled faintly along her veins. "I will not be confined," she said calmly. "And I will not be sacrificed." The guards hesitated. They had not expected resistance from her. "You are destabilizing centuries of order," Velarin warned. "Order that leads to extinction," she replied. 1 minute. I could see tremors in her hand. The energy output was straining her. "You will stand down," Velarin commanded. "No," she said. The glow intensified. The air itself vibrated. I stepped closer without blocking her. Not in front. Beside. 30 seconds. The Admiral's jaw tightened. "You would fracture our people for these humans?" "I would save them," she said. "And in doing so, save us." 20 seconds. The guards shifted uncertainly. Velarin studied her for a long moment. Then something changed. Recognition. She wasn't bluffing. 10 seconds. Shield lattice deployment initiated, the AI announced. Across space, invisible geometric barriers unfolded around Earth's orbital shell. The Virex fleet entered weapons range, and their opening salvo slammed against a wall of light. The flagship tremored faintly as energy signatures spiked. External feeds flickered to life. Virex projectiles disintegrated against the lattice. Shockwaves rippled harmlessly outward. Velarin stared at the projections in stunned silence. "It holds," I murmured. "It always would," Elyndari whispered. The glow around her arm faded. Her knees buckled slightly. I caught her before she hit the floor. Velarin stepped forward slowly. "You have forced our hand," he said quietly. "No," she replied weakly but clearly. I have forced evolution. The Virex fleet regrouped. Attempted flanking maneuvers. The lattice adapted. Energy patterns shifted dynamically, absorbing and redirecting kinetic force. Within minutes, Virex vessels began withdrawing. Retreat. For the first time in recorded interstellar history, they retreated from a defended world. Silence settled across the command deck. Velarin looked from the tactical display to her. You will return to Elyndra Prime for inquiry, he said finally. Yes, she replied. You may face execution. I have faced that possibility for months. He studied her. Then he looked at me. And you, human? I go where she goes. That wasn't strategic. It was instinct. Velarin regarded me for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he lowered his head slightly. Not deference. Acknowledgement. You have altered more than a battle today, he said. We had help, I replied. He didn't argue. As security stood down, I helped Elyndari steady herself. You're shaking, I murmured. It required more output than anticipated. Worth it. She looked up at me. Earth's reflection shimmered faintly in her eyes through the viewport. Yes, she said softly. Because I am still alive. And in that moment, I realized something fully for the first time. She had been ready to die. Not out of weakness. Not out of drama. But because she believed it was efficient. And I had refused to let efficiency decide her fate. We left the flagship under uneasy truce. The Virex fleet was in full retreat. Earth was safe. For now. But I knew the real consequences hadn't begun yet. Because saving a planet is easier than surviving the politics afterward. And I had just committed treason in orbit. The official inquiry lasted 3 weeks. 3 weeks of hearings, sealed testimony, diplomatic bargaining, and carefully edited public statements that never once used the word treason, even though everyone in the room knew that was exactly what I had committed. The Virex fleet's retreat changed everything. Earth's Defense Council couldn't deny the shield lattice had saved billions of lives. The Elyndari High Council couldn't deny that Alera's defiance had preserved their own strategic future. Survival has a way of rewriting narratives, but it doesn't erase consequences. I stood before a tribunal in dress uniform for the last time, while a panel of officers read out my reassignment orders. Rank stripped. Commendations retained, but rendered ceremonial. Active combat status revoked. Gunnery Sergeant Ryan Carter, the presiding officer, concluded, You are hereby reassigned under diplomatic security protocol. Effective immediately. A softer exile. I saluted anyway. When I stepped out onto the Pacifica balcony that night, the ocean looked the same as it had the first evening I met her. Elyndari joined me minutes later. No armor this time. No luminous battle glow. Just silver skin reflecting moonlight. I am told you lost your rank, she said quietly. I did. Because of me. Because of choice, I corrected. She studied me for a long moment. My counsel survives, she said. But it will never be the same. Neither will mine. She moved closer, resting her hands on the railing. They call me reckless, she added. They call me insubordinate. A faint smile touched her lips. Perhaps they are correct. Probably. Silence settled between us, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was earned. I was assigned to protect you, I said finally. Yes. But somewhere along the way, that changed. She looked up at me. You refused to let me become a sacrifice, she said softly. You refused to let me stay broken, I replied. The human soldier swore to protect the alien princess. But he had needed protection himself. Not from bullets. From the slow erosion that comes after war, when survival feels like punishment instead of victory. She had reminded me that surviving wasn't cowardice. It was defiance. Earth's moon rose over the ocean, quiet and distant. The alliance holds, she said. For now. For now, she agreed. Her hand brushed mine, deliberate this time, not accidental. We saved each other, she whispered. I nodded. Yeah, I said. And for the first time since Titan Station, I didn't feel like the last man standing in a burning corridor. I felt like I was standing beside someone. Not in front. Not behind. Beside. And maybe that was its own kind of victory. Thank you for listening to this story to the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Write in the comments what moment in this story impressed you the most. And also check out the other videos that just appeared on your screen. See you in the next video.